breakup songs are the other side of the coin when it comes to the world of love songs. Everything that you loved about that person fades away. Things you once found refreshing become vile. The taste of love you were given becomes acidic. And now, you wouldn't even piss out a fire if it engulfed the one that you used to love. Never has that been more exemplified than in this week's song, the 1995 extremely bitter breakup song, Alanis Morissette's You Oughta Know. Hello to those of us that are broken and those who did the breaking, and welcome back to Heard It in a Love Song, where we dig into the trauma that could be conveyed in a classic love song. This week, we're taking a look into the history of a singer that was the inspiration for How I Met Your Mother's Robin Sparkles, Alanis Morissette, and how she came up with one of the angriest breakup songs ever laid down on a track. We start our story on June 1st, 1974, in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. Specifically at the Riverside Hospital. This is where and when we meet up with the school principal, Alan Morissette, and his wife, a teacher named Georgia, who are in the hospital with their son Chad to welcome to the family a set of twins, Wade Morissette, and 12 minutes later, Alanis Nadine Morissette, whose name was a feminine twist on Alan. Now, her parents weren't just normal run-of-the-mill teachers. They happened to teach for military schools, and not unlike other military families, they had to move around a lot. So between the ages of 3 and 6, she lived with her parents in Lahr, Black Forest, Germany, where Alanis, in an interview with The Guardian, recalls one of her earliest moments. My twin brother and I were the only non-Germans in the room, and it was terrifying. After that 3-year stint abroad, the family returned to Ottawa, and it was there that 6-year-old Alanis had a few life-changing moments. The more negative of the two was the fact that she almost died. In her interview with The Guardian, she recalled showing off in front of a bunch of boys, having decided to jump off a football post. However, her shoelace got caught and she broke her arm, with her heart rate slowing down so much they thought they'd lose her. But they didn't, and it was shortly thereafter that she happened upon a performance by Lindsay and Jackie Morgan, then one of Canada's most popular folk duos, that her passion for performing was ignited. In 1983, when she was 9 years old, she was on a family vacation to Los Angeles, California. And not impressed with the usual tourist traps, Alanis had only one destination in mind, the home of Grease star Olivia Newton-John. Upon finding her Malibu estate on a map of the stars, she marched up to the entrance, buzzed the intercom, and announced, "Olivia, I don't know if you can see me, but if you can, I'm going to be big like you someday." By the end of her visit to Olivia Newton-John's home, she was already writing and composing her own songs. One in particular, Fate Stay With Me, she sent to Lindsay Morgan from the aforementioned Lindsay and Jackie, who described it as something really special. The song was about a breakup and emotionally intuitive beyond her years, prompting Morgan to ask where she got the material from. "Well, it's not from experience," was Morissette's deadpan response. When she was 11, she auditioned for and received a role on the Canadian children's television show You Can't Do That on Television, which was shot in Ottawa. She would be a popular recurring character, but only stayed on for 1 season. With the earnings from the television show, she produced her first single on her own label, L'Amour Records, which she created with friend and mentor Lindsay Morgan, L'Amour Records being an amalgamation of their first initials and the M-O-R from their last names, and kind of a tongue-in-cheek take on the word l'amour for love. The 1987 release, Fate Stay With Me, with a B-side of Find the Right Man, which, my God, is a banger, was recorded at Marigold Studios in Toronto and was engineered by Rich Dodson of the Canadian classic rock band The Stampeders, who had a 1971 hit with their song Sweet City Woman. Sweet City Woman. They printed up more than 1,000 copies. Lindsay would get Alanis into as many local talent shows as he possibly could, with her performing Fate Stay With Me and Find the Right Man, many of which she won.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 1987 CJOH Youth Talent Search 87 Grand Prize winner is Alanis Morissette.
By the time she was 13, she had already written 30 tunes. And it was at this moment that Alan and Georgia realized that Lindsay was itching to get back to his own music and that Alanis was in need of a manager. Enters Stephen Cloven. A former skater with the Ice Capades, Stephen Cloven had never been a manager before, but he knew exactly how to make someone look good. And that is exactly what he did for Alanis. He booked her to sing her own songs at local fashion shows and to belt out the national anthem at sporting events.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land.
Telling Hazlitt.net, she really tried to emulate the two reigning pop princesses at the time, who were Debbie Gibson and Tiffany. She liked Debbie Gibson because Debbie wrote her own music. Team Alanis was off to a good start. Another member of Team Alanis was Leslie Howe. He was a celebrity of sorts too, known around Ottawa as one half of 1-to-1, which was Canada's answer to the Eurythmics. Alan and Georgia sent Leslie Alanis' demo, and Leslie, who upon meeting the teenaged Alanis thought, this girl is good. She can sing, she has talent, she's got a great personality and great looks. Perhaps we can do something together. I think that Howe probably viewed her as a potential big moneymaker for him, says Karen Fournier, author of The Words and Music of Alanis Morissette. Without him, she was probably just going to keep singing the national anthem, she says. He had the recording studio, he had the connections. So in October 1988, Morissette signed with Leslie Howe's production company, appointing him producer for her first 5 albums. All they needed now was a record deal, and that would take money. So it was 1990, and the next big move? Star Search, and the hopes of winning the $50,000 prize. The first audition was a horrible experience for her, as the woman in charge of casting basically kicked her out for attempting to sing a Whitney Houston song, despite the fact that the song she chose was on the list of songs they deemed appropriate.
No. Whitney.
Denied.
After some hell-raising from her manager, they were given another audition and she nailed it, performing a poppier dance take on the Osmonds' 1970 hit, One Bad Apple, and with their confidence sky high, Team Alanis decided to use One Bad Apple as her first song, filled with piss and vinegar that there would be a second episode. However, she lost out to a singing cowboy named Chad. But never one to take it lying down, Team Alanis ramped up things in a big way. Leslie Howe recruited his 1-to-1 partner, Louise Rennie, his Canadian equivalent to Annie Lennox, as well as Frank Fish Levin, whose band 8 Seconds routinely crossed paths with 1-to-1 on the local bar circuit. Together, the trio helped write Morissette's first track, Walk Away. Then they whisked her off to Paris to film the video. Clips of the unreleased demo, which aired in Alanis, Too Hot, a 1991 documentary, shows 14-year-old leather coat wearing Alanis dancing and singing in the streets of Paris.
I'll walk away and say goodbye. You don't want me anymore.
The idea of this music video was to use it as sort of a video resume, something akin to Elle Woods in Legally Blonde.
That's why you should vote for me, Elle Woods, future lawyer for the class of 2004.
And much like Elle Woods, boy did that tactic pay off. During a meeting about 1-to-1 with head of A&R at MCA Publishing Canada, John Alexander, Howe played the video for Walk Away, and in a bit of irony, John Alexander signed Alanis and not 1-to-1. So, she was 16 now, and with a signing bonus from MCA burning a hole in her pocket, she went and bought herself a car. Specifically a Volkswagen Cabriolet. She wanted the vanity plate to read Raunch, but Stephen Cloven put his ice skate-clad foot down on the topic. People are already saying to me, so you're the next Tiffany. Well, I'm not, Alanis told the Ottawa Citizen in '91. When it came time to think about an image, all I said is, I don't want to be fake. Alanis presented herself as a bubbly dance puppet with a soul, but in reality, she was just as much as a puppet as Tiffany. She was kind of following orders, said John Alexander. We were kind of controlling her career at that point. Soon, another member was added to Team Alanis, and that was Sergei Cote, keyboardist and music arranger. So Alanis, Leslie, and Sergei became a sort of Canadian musical Three Musketeers. From September to December 1990, Alanis, then a grade 11 student at Glebe Collegiate, spent her evenings at Distortion Studios, recording Alanis. Alanis being both the title of her album and her stage name, opting to not use her full name as they didn't want any unnecessary confusion with another Canadian songstress, Alana Miles. What What was amazing about her was she was always in a good mood. Sergey would recall. Frank Levin, who worked on 4 of the 10 tracks on her debut, doesn't remember Alanis ever being in a bad mood either. But, like a lot of the things that were going on for her at this period, that happiness was an act. Call it being a sweetheart or pin it on stereotypical Canadian behavior, but Alanis would tell the New York Times in 1996, "I was always trying to please everyone, and I was not good at saying no. I would think that I was offending somebody." And it's really funny if you frame your thinking as old Alanis versus what she would become. As a shy teenager who was eager to please her elder mentors, she was too afraid to even put her foot down and demand her vanity plate. But she would grow into a woman that would not be afraid to very publicly ask her ex,
Are you thinking of me when you fuck her?
In a way, she was ashamed to be who she really was, and it was a shame that extended to her body image as well. With Stephen Cloven recalling, she even went on Weight Watchers for quite a while. As if that weren't disturbing enough, he adds that Alanis' weight became like an obsession for the male executives around her. They were like, either you lose 20 pounds or... But Leeds Levy, worldwide head of MCA Publishing, says the focus on Alanis' size came from a place of concern. "We got a little bit nervous," he says, of her weight gain. "I'd never seen anything like that. It was so rapid. And I was like, is everything okay?" But everything was not okay. In 2005, Alanis confessed to US Weekly that career pressure had led her to develop an eating disorder between the ages of 14 and 18. "I recall being called into a meeting at the recording studio," she said, "and the person said, 'I know I called you to redo vocals, but I actually wanted to talk to you about your weight. You can't be successful if you're fat.'" Despite all the pretty outward hatred for her from her own record label and those who she considered mentors, she worked through the internal struggles, and Alanis was released on April 6, 1991. Its first single, Too Hot, reached number 14 on the Canadian single charts, and in July, peaked with the top 10 on contemporary hit radio. Feel Your Love was released as a single during this period. And the CRIA certified the album gold.
A gold record, representing sales of over 50,000 copies of her MCA debut album, Alanis.
Alanis reached number 25 on the Canadian album chart, and 2 other singles were released, Walk Away and Plastic. Andrea Warner, the author behind We Oughta Know, How 4 Women Ruled the 90s and Changed Canadian Music, would say they wanted her to be older than she was, and they weren't willing to wait for her to grow up. In the music videos accompanying Alanis, she is styled to look about 25, draped in mature outfits, and men. Warner notes that Alanis was often paired up with guys that were much older than her, such as Matt LeBlanc, who was about 24 when she was 16, suggesting that she was sold more as a Janet Jackson type versus a Debbie Gibson.
Hi, I'm Rick Moranis. Join me for the Junos this Sunday on CBC.
At the 1992 Juno Awards, think Canadian Grammys, Too Hot received nominations for Single of the Year, losing to Life is a Highway by Tom Cochrane. And Best Dance Recording, losing out to Everyone's a Winner by Boot Sauce. She did, however, win the award for Most Promising Female Vocalist. The album went on to sell over 200,000 copies. It was also during this time that she opened up for one of the hottest rappers at the time, Vanilla Ice.
All right, stop. Serena S. texted Alanis, what was your favorite part of opening for Vanilla Ice's tour back in the day, in the 90s? And is it true you weren't allowed to look him in the eye?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of artists are overwhelmed by incredible, large amount of stimuli, and I think me looking at him would have overstimulated him.
It was also in 1992 that she would meet up and fall in love with the considerably older Dave Coulier.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Given that he was 15 years older than her, and the fact that they were both on Nickelodeon shows, with Alanis on the cast of You Can't Do That on Television, and Dave hosting Out of Control, when she was 11 and he was 26, I am left with a lot of feelings, and not a one of them is pleasant.
This is disgusting.
But more on that later. In August of 1992, Now Is the Time was released. And despite a few well-received singles, In Emotional Way, No Apologies, and Change Is Never a Waste of Time,
Sometimes life is so unkind, but change is never a waste of time.
the album wasn't as celebrated as her debut. However, it did go gold with 50,000 copies sold. Some people say it was a flop, said Leeds Levy, but it was hardly a flop. Richard Palmise, head of MCA Records in the US at the time, said that he discussed releasing Alanis' album south of the Canadian border, but ultimately decided not to since they were not seen as commercially viable for the US market.
No.
Alanis.
Denied.
Music in the United States was changing. With Nirvana's Nevermind creeping up the charts, Alanis found herself losing her taste for teen spirit. Sometime in the early 90s, Alanis traveled to New York, and while she was there, she stayed with John Alexander. One night she knocked on his bedroom door, and he remembers this conversation very vividly because in the history of Alanis Morissette, it was her Declaration of Independence moment, the moment where she finally took control of her own career. With her saying to him, "You know, I don't think I'm gonna have a career doing this dance stuff with other people writing for me." He replied, "What do you want to do?" And she said, "I want to write what Alanis feels, and what Alanis thinks." This was the beginning of the end for her time at MCA. In the liner notes of her last pop album, she wrote Leslie Howe a goodbye. "Thanks for sharing your talent and friendship, and giving me the freedom to grow." She would also write a sort of eulogy for who she was, and a hello to who she was becoming. No regrets, growth. Give yourself credit. Swallow your pride, but spit it up when you're done to make sure it's still intact. Be grateful, be real, never give up, and don't be afraid. I believe in you. It's now 1993. Alanis is 19, and for the first time she was on her own. She moved from her hometown of Ottawa to Toronto, and she spent this time meeting with a bevy of songwriters, but the lack of results frustrated her, prompting a move to Nashville a few months later, which unfortunately also proved unfruitful. So, not unlike Jewel, she began making trips to California, and it was there she made a goal to work with as many musicians as possible in the hopes of meeting a collaborator. It was Scott Welch, a manager who has worked with the likes of Dokken, Steve Perry, Paula Abdul, Collective Soul, and Fear Factory, who officially enabled her to reclaim her last name and her career. It was pretty clear to Stephen Cloven that his time as her manager ended when she said her goodbyes to Leslie and John. And it was John that acted as a bridge between Stephen Cloven and Scott Welch. Scott Welch introduced her to a man that she had only known in passing, a songwriter of extreme renown, Glenn Ballard. And this was the medicine Alanis needed to finally be herself.
Every time I scratch my nails down someone else's back, I hope you feel it. Well, can you feel it? Cheeky.
Glenn Ballard is a regular Max Martin when it comes to penning hit songs, with Believe by Josh Groban,
You have everything you need if you just believe.
Hold On by Wilson Phillips,
Someday somebody's gonna make you wanna turn around and say goodbye.
Man in the Mirror by Michael Jackson,
I'm starting with the man in the mirror.
Pink by Aerosmith,
Yeah, please let me turn out the light.
The Space Between by Dave Matthews,
The space between the tears we cry.
and You Look So Good in Love by George Strait,
You look so good in love.
being a few of the songs that he penned. So when Alanis met Glenn, their Wonder Twin powers activated and formed one of the greatest albums of all time, Jagged Little Pill. According to Glenn, the connection was instant, and within 30 minutes of meeting each other, they had begun experimenting with different sounds in his home studio. Despite Alanis' naivete, he knew that he was dealing with a woman wise beyond her years, and the turning point in their sessions was the song Perfect, which was written and recorded in 20 minutes.
We'll love you just the way you are. If you're perfect,
Alanis improvised the lyrics on the spot to Glenn's delicate guitar strums. The version of the song that appears on Jagged Little Pill was the only take the two ever recorded, and with Perfect, the floodgate was opened, and soon, Alanis' thoughts and emotions began pouring out onto paper at a frenzied pace. I felt that he wasn't judging me, and I felt that he had enough security within himself to give the ball to a 20-year-old and let her go with it, she told J.D. Considine of the Chicago Sun-Times. But these happy times were not without turmoil. In Los Angeles, she lived in a small, one-room apartment. On the way home from a supermarket one afternoon, she was robbed at gunpoint. A man rummaged through her bag while another held a gun to her head and made her lie down on the pavement. She would later reveal that her only concern was for the book of lyrics that she was carrying in her bag. To her relief, the lyrics were untouched, and they would eventually make up the bulk of Jagged Little Pill. Deciding that she was stronger than what happened to her and Glenn knocked out Jagged Little Pill in a span of 2 weeks. Glenn provided the rough tracks, playing guitar, keyboard, and programming drum machines, while Alanis played harmonica and sang. The duo sought to write and record one song a day, in 12 or 16-hour shifts, with minimal overdubbing later on. All of Morissette's singing on the album respects that rule, with each recorded in 1 or 2 takes. The tracks that were redone later in professional studio always used the original demo vocals. From there, they would shop the demo of the album around, finally finding a home with the Madonna-owned and operated Maverick Records, one-time home to artists like Bad Brains, Candlebox, Deftones, Erasure, Jack's Mannequin, Muse, and The Prodigy. However, MCA did try to swoop in and offer to release the album. "We blew it," Richard Palmise would say. "You win some, and you lose some." But clearly this was a loss. A big loss. And it was a loss for Leslie Howe, too, since Alanis was contractually obligated to give him 3 more albums, but since she wanted out, he let her go for an undisclosed price. Leslie is now based in Atlanta, Georgia, where he runs his own company, Illumisoft Lighting. Jagged Little Pill was released on June 13th, 1995, and displayed a drastic change from her first 2 efforts. The sound is more muscular, her voice is more raw, the guitar work more aggressive, wrote Christopher John Farley in Time. Its initial single, You Oughta Know, was filled to the brim with grit and anger.
I know the version of me. Is she perverted like me? Would she go down on you in a theater?
You Oughta Know initiated a trend, with the other singles of the album, All I Really Want,
And I really want is some patience.
and Hand in My Pocket,
'Cause I've got one hand in my pocket and the other one is flicking a cigarette.
However, it was her pioneering work with the single Ironic that set the fire ablaze, making it her biggest hit.
It's like rain on your wedding day.
Subsequently, she released the singles You Learn
You live, you learn, you love, you learn.
and Head Over Feet.
You've already won me over in spite of me. And don't be alarmed if I fall head over feet.
Which went on to make Jagged Little Pill remain in the top 20 of the Billboard 200 for more than a year. Jagged Little Pill was a phenomenal success. It was certified 16 times platinum for shipments over 16 million copies. Alanis held the record for the youngest artist to be certified diamond in the US until she was beaten by Britney Spears with her debut album, Baby One More Time. Alanis also became a regular in Juno Awards with her biggest win marked in 1996 when she brought home Best Album, Single, Female Vocalist, and Rock Album.
And the winner is
Jagged Little Pill, Alanis Morissette.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank a few people, and I love you too. I'd like to thank Glenn Ballard, my collaborator, and since become my best friend. Scott Welch, my integrity field manager, who's here with me tonight. John Alexander, who's been with me from the time that I was very young and has seen me go through many things. Thanks, buddy. My band members who've grown with me and who've become very close with me, and Maverick Records, thank you very much. And We Are Canada, thank you for everything. And I just want to say that most people's growth is done in private, and artist growth is done in public. And I thank Canada as a country for accepting that in me. Thanks very much.
only losing out in Levi's Entertainer of the Year, which was nabbed by Shania Twain. The international audience has also favored her music quite a bit, as she was picked as the winner of 4 Grammy Awards in the same year: Best Female Rock Vocal Performance, Best Rock Song, Best Rock Album, and Album of the Year.
And the album of the year is Jagged Little Pill. Alanis Morissette.
Thank you. All I can say is I love you, Glenn. And I actually accept this on behalf of anyone who's ever written a song from a very pure place, very spiritual place. And there's plenty of room for a lot of artists, so there's no such thing as the best. And thank you very much, Glenn.
To my absolutely fearless and brilliant partner, Alanis, thank you and I love you. To Maverick Records, Guy Osiri, thank you, Guy. Scott Welch, John Alexander at MCA Music Publishing, Kurt Denny, all of whom brought Alanis into my life. I'm so grateful for that. I'm grateful to all of my brothers and sisters in the music business who shared this music with us and said, you know, you did a good job. You made the record you wanted to make, and we like it, and that's good. And I think it portends for good things in music. So thank you all.
Did you forget about me, Mr. Duplicity? I hate to bug you in the middle of dinner, but it was a slap in the face, how quickly I was replaced. And are you thinking of me when you fuck her?
She was also nominated for Best New Artist, losing out to Hootie and the Blowfish, and Song of the Year, losing out to Kiss from a Rose by Seal. And if you haven't seen that episode, click right here to check it out. I'll also link it below. Random fact, only 2 artists have lost the Best New Artist award, yet won Album of the Year in the same year: Von Meter in 1963 and Alanis Morissette in 1996. Alanis' first hometown gig for Jagged Little Pill was held in the spring of 1995 at
Zayfied Beeblebrox,
a hole in the wall next to Bear Fax Gentlemen's Club and Ottawa's Byward Market. Ex-manager Stephen Cloven, who hadn't seen her in over a year, was shocked. The young woman he had always prettied up was now looking dirty and grungy. Her curls wilted into a greasy mane, face as naked as the strippers next door. And this wasn't the sort of classy establishment he had prepped her for. When the two finally spoke, he said, "Okay, now you can have a license plate with Raunch on it." The subsequent tour for Jagged Little Pill, which introduced to the world drummer Taylor Hawkins, later of the Foo Fighters, showed that she was so much more than just a studio star. She was a top-flight performer and musician able to connect with audiences of all ages and backgrounds, many who would never have previously self-identified as rock fans. But now, let's get to the Uncle Joey-shaped elephant in the room, shall we?
Oh, look, here he is now.
Talk. Don't worry, I'll talk to her.
Before we get to the tea, let's meet the players that made the song possible. Of course, the always talented Alanis Morissette on vocals. Backing her up was Jane's Addiction's own Dave Navarro on guitar, Red Hot Chili Peppers and the Downfall of Marty McFly, Flea on bass, Ben Montench of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers on Hammond organ, and future fighter of Foo, Taylor Hawkins on drums. According to Navarro, there were no guide tracks. We just had the vocal to work from, and we basically jammed until we found something that we were both happy with, and Alanis was happy too. With Flea saying, "When I first heard the track, it had a different bassist and a guitarist on it. I listened to the bass line and thought, that's some weak shit. It was no flash and no smash. But the vocal was strong, so I just tried to play something good." As for the vocals, well, what you hear in the final version was her one and only take. The music video was directed by Nick Egan, who had directed other music videos like Far Behind by Candlebox, and Iggy Pop's cover of Wild One. This is often considered a revenge song, but Alanis says that was never the motivation. The context is important, she told Spotify. I didn't know that many people would be hearing the song. I didn't think the whole planet would be hearing it. I was writing it so I didn't get sick. I was writing it to get it out of my body, the same way I would speak to my therapist or my best friend. If I didn't speak about it, I would have gotten sick. It was very cathartic. I thought that writing songs with these subject matters in them would mean I wouldn't have to talk about it to human beings. But having sung You Oughta Know countless times over the years, the relationship itself was still tinged with pain, and I quickly came to see the process of writing these songs as very cathartic. But it wasn't healing. I still had to interact with human beings to resolve things. Alanis became frustrated when the provocative line, "Which should go down on you in a theater," became the song's biggest talking point. That one line being focused on so much more in the media was a misrepresentation of why it was written. She told Q magazine in 1996, "It says a lot about how society may not have evolved as much as I thought, that it still sees sexual references as taboo. It was written from a desperate, dark, almost pathetically sad place within my subconscious, a conversation I was having with my own psyche. It's a line as potent as any other on the record." The song was a top 10 hit in 3 different genre charts in the US, peaking at number 3 on the active rock charts, 7 on the contemporary hit radio charts, and number 1 for 5 weeks on the Billboard Alternative Song charts, retaining the record for the longest run by a woman atop that chart until it was surpassed by Lord's Royals in 2013. In August 2015, Taylor Swift invited Alanis on stage in Los Angeles to sing the song with her. On November 22nd of that year, Demi Lovato and Alanis Morissette teamed up to perform You Oughta Know at the 2015 American Music Awards. Since the song's initial release, it has been covered by numerous artists. Weird Al Yankovic utilized a portion of the song for the alternative polka, which would appear on his album Bad Hair Day.
And I'm here to remind you of the mess you left when you went away.
Alternative punk band Thousand Mona Lisas covered the song.
Another version of me, is she perverted like me? Would she go down on you in a theater?
Richard Cheese and Lounge Against the Machine covered the song in a comedic lounge setting on their 2005 album Appetite for Destruction.
It was a slap in the face, how quickly I was replaced. Are you thinking of me when you fuck her?
It has also been covered by fellow Canuck, Posey.
Another version of me, is she perverted like me? Would she go down on you in a theater?
It has appeared on many shows including 30 Rock, Degrassi, Bob's Burgers,
And every time I scratch my nails down someone else's back, I hope you feel it. Do you feel it?
and for a I shit you not, and I promise this wasn't intentional, a 4th week in a row Office mention.
You oughta know.
It's also featured pretty hilariously in a bunch of old vines, where a woman would keep singing it to her husband to annoy him. By now, I'm sure you want me to cut it out and get to what really matters. Who the hell is the song about? Well, much like next week's episode, You're So Vain, the truth is a bit cloudy. The list of suspects includes everyone from pro hockey player Mike Peluso to Friends star Matt LeBlanc, who was featured in that music video for Walk Away. But the running theory is that it's Dave Coulier. Now, there's been like 5 or 6 times that he said it's not about him or that it is about him, but going off the most recent interview, it seems that it is. Dave, who dated Morissette in the 90s shortly after divorcing his ex-wife, told Huffington Post Live that when the song came out in 1995, I called her and said, "Look, what do you want me to say to the media when all these folks call me?" And she said, "You can say whatever you want." He added that there's one line in the song that's a dead giveaway that it's about him. "I hate to bug you in the middle of dinner." When I heard the line, I was like, uh-oh.
Stinky.
Even Bob Saget has claimed to be there during that call. John Stamos said that he ran into Alanis years later, and she confirmed that it was about Dave, but take that with a Stamos-sized grain of salt. While Alanis says she'll never tell exactly who the song is about, she's not surprised that Mr. Duplicity is denying it, whoever he really is. The ironic thing is, if anybody questions whether it's them I'm writing about or not, that means something in and of itself, she said after Jagged Little Pill was released. You Oughta Know comes in at 105 beats per minute. What a special song You Oughta Know is. It's so passive-aggressive that it circles back around and just becomes straight-up aggressive. Not every breakup is amicable. Hell, most times they aren't. And this is the crown jewel of messy breakup songs. I think that's why it will remain timeless. A yearbook of betrayal and hatred from a very specific time in Alanis Morissette's life. Time may pass, but for whoever the song was about, it will always be there
To remind you of the mess you left when you went away.
There's also a Broadway musical adaptation of Jagged Little Pill that has a version of You Oughta Know that is also so passive-aggressive that it becomes aggressive, but in a completely different way. Kind of like when a parent tells you they're not mad at you, they're disappointed. That's how that song plays out in the musical. This week's Love Homework is a bit of an outlier, because it's not as unknown as the last few songs, but it's still a song I think more people should listen to. An equally angry and messy breakup song, Slow Hands by Interpol. If you like what you learned today, and you'd like to continue learning, please consider subscribing and clicking the bell. Also toss a like if you learned something that you didn't know. Until next time, my name is Richard Hunt, and heard it in a love song.